Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first edition of the California 2025 Spiritist Learning Series. We're trying something new. We really appreciate your patience with us and you joining us in the first weekend of the year, sort of, to start our spiritisting activities here in California in different ways. We're very thrilled that you're here today. And what makes this day special, beside our guest speaker, which we're going to introduce you in just a little bit, is that we are starting the new year with a new attitude towards our meetings. We're trying to do live broadcasts that are simultaneously joined by watch parties in different parts. So not only are we broadcasting across the US, across the world, really, but we're also meeting in different places to try to get that sense of comradeship and togetherness that is so vital to the work that we do, because there's nothing better than being together, being at a spiritist group, being able to see each other, feel the energy, and at the same time, listen to smart friends who have a lot of different perspectives and insights about spiritist topics or topics through the spiritist lens in a way that adds to our understanding. So we really want to broaden our opportunities to learn by having folks that bring different perspectives for us, and of course, doing all that with the caveat of diminishing travel, because it's always difficult for us too. So today, we are here at the Spirit Society of San Diego as well. There's some folks here with us, but what we're here to do is to listen to our friend Marcia Trajano, who's going to talk to us about Joanna de Angelis. I want to introduce you to Marcia, but before I do that, let me bring her, on camera so that we can say hello to her really quickly. Hey, Marcia, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? So good to be here.
Great, great to have you here. I'm very excited to be able to do this with you. Thank you for starting the year with us in this way. And I just want to introduce you to folks who may not know you. I'm sure that a lot of people do. But the wonderful thing about Marcia today is that she's really engaged in shedding a light into the psychological perspective of spiritism, so to say, and how spirituality can play a major role. She is the president and co-founder of the Solitude Center for Spiritual Living, an organization dedicated to promoting spiritism through virtual platforms. She's out there in Tennessee, but she's also the co-host of the podcast Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life, which is based on the teachings of Joanna de Angelis, who we're talking about today, and is produced in collaboration with Mansell do Caminho and the United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AMI Brazil, which is the Association of Medical Spiritists. And she also has over 25 years of active participation in the Spiritist movement. She started really young. She was about 1 year old when she started. Um, and she's also a speaker and facilitator of study groups, leading discussions on a variety of different topics, both in English and Portuguese. She holds a master's degree in technology management and is a certified project management professional, a PMP. But more importantly, too, she is just awesome. We love having her around, and she currently works in the healthcare industry. So, Marcia, thank you so very much for being with us. And the format today is very simple, very informal. We're trying different things, and we would love to hear from folks what works well. I know that we have different people reaching out. Look at that. We got people from Zurich today. We have our friend here from San Diego as well that we're very happy to see online. Look at that. Bernadette is here with us. We're so excited to have folks with us from all over the place. Thank you for joining us. Marcia, I'm going to turn it over to you and get out of your way. Is that fine?
That's fine. Can you share my screen?
Great. So without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to you and get your presentation on the
Yeah.
screen too. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Bernadette. It is so good to be here. We are here today. I'm really excited because, as Dan mentioned, it's the first time we're kicking off. So, feel very honored to be the one to do that. And Really, really excited to be able to bring to you my take, my own interpretation, my own how am I impressed by the teachings of Joanna de Angelis? The topic here is that Joanna de Angelis is a spiritual pioneer in psychology and healing. And let's go ahead and Dan, I believe I no longer am sharing, so let me try again. All right. Let's see. Yes, yes. So, as I mentioned before, we're talking here a little bit about this spirit, right? The spirit guide of Divaldo Pereira Franco, but the one who really is brings to us that pioneering aspect to spiritism in terms of spiritual healing, and that is, of course, through and I'm going to go to the next. I believe, give me just a second. I'm trying to do this in a way that is better. This is different for me, Dan, everyone. But as I mentioned here, she is this pioneer, the spiritual pioneer in the field of psychology and healing. And as we see in the screen, her primary focus is on psychology, but also spiritual healing through self discovery. And she does that, and she really is a key figure to help us understand that when we open our minds, we are able, through the content that she brings to us, to be guided in this new path, which is our spiritual improvement and spiritual growth. I'd like to, just for our reference here, give some of the references. Just it's on the screen. I'm going to talk about it later specifically, but as you can see in the screens, there's some very interesting fact, which is the psychology series that she brought to us, and we started publication what 40 now 45 years ago in 1980, where she wrote those 16 books. Of course, her work is much broader than that, but 11 out of the 16 are already available in English. And I think this is key for all of us to understand. Many people keep thinking, oh, everything is in Portuguese. A lot of it is in Portuguese, I'm afraid, but we have a lot available as well. And the titles are there. While we talk a little bit about this introduction to Joanna de Angelis, right? So, want to also mention quickly that in preparing for today, I would like to bring to you, and unfortunately, those are not in English yet, which is the psychology series, and it's a theoretical framework for anyone who's interested in studying her and teaching about the content that Joanna de Angelis brought. Also, there's a very interesting book that this person, he's from Puerto Rico, Josue Douglas Rodriguez. He brought Joanna de Angelis, and the title in Portuguese, roughly translated, would be Joanna de Angelis as understood by all, which is he brings all her main topics. There's so many books. If you were to see my desk today, you would see, oh my goodness, there are books and more books, and those are mostly in English, everyone. All that we have from the content that is available to all of us. So I think it's super cool that we have all of this at our fingertips. But moving on, wanted to bring to us John chapter 8, verse 32. He tells us something very, very important, which is, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free, right? It is a theme that Jesus often included in most of his teachings. And it really means that nothing but the truth can set us free. And Joanna de Angelis, like John in his message, created the content of a lot of her books that focuses on that how can I become free by looking inward and getting to the truth about myself. It's a very simplistic way to talk about all the work that she brings to us, but it is important for us to think of that because it is really interesting. I showed earlier the list of the books in the psychology collection, and that's the focus of our topic today, even though Joanna de Angelis, through her collaboration with Divaldo Pereira Franco, wrote many more books and many messages. But one of the things that she says, and in her book, in English, this one is not yet translated into English, In Busca da Verdade, in Portuguese, but is In Search of Truth, roughly. Um, she highlights how critical it is that all of us understand what is this freedom that Jesus speaks of, right? Why is so important for him, Jesus in this case, to reference the idea of liberation from everything from Joanna's perspective, she says we can be free of anything that is the source of our own afflictions, right? Anything that is hurting us, that is painful to us. And because of the ability to attain this sense of freedom, then we are able to not only understand the root cause, but also to prevent us from living an existence that is not happy. So I love when in some of her books, I believe it's Wake Up and Be Happy. It's a little, they're all tiny books, very dense, but a really cute one where she promises in her words that we're all fated, all of us, you and me, we have this fate. It's the end of all of our existence. We'll all be infinitely happy. So, as immortal spirits that we are, our legacy is to be able to attain that infinite happiness that she mentions. And that happiness, of course, is very closely related to idea of reaching to the truth of us. So I wanted to also say, Dan, who was kind enough to invite and introduce me earlier today, right, that this is something that this discussion is also references to Paul of Tarsus, right, which is the idea that we're here for this good fight. But as we go back to Joanna, she brings to us the point of happiness and freedom, but those I'm going very large, right? The overview of Joanna de Angelis, but she draws her topics, her content from three sources. Number one, the parables, yes. So it's a biblical content, but she brings Jesus in those parables to us to understand from a psychological perspective. She also brings another source, which is Spiritism. And finally, the third source are based on analytical psychology, and especially that was developed by the Swiss neurologist and psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung. So kudos to you, Sarah. I know it's quite late in Zurich, the land of Mr. Jung, but that's where Joanna brings to us. And she states in the book, The Awakening of the Spirit, the following, and this is my translation, so bear with me. She says, the task of Spiritist psychology is to become a bridge between the remarkable contributions of the ancient studies of eminent psychologists and offering them a bridge with Spiritist thought, which illuminates the recesses and abysses of the unconscious. So, keyword here is our bridge between spiritism and psychology, and the other one is to get into the abyss of our unconscious. So she keeps going by saying the impulses, the tendencies, the conflicts, torments, and the aspirations of beauty. So I love that quote, and thank you for allowing me to bring to you. So basically, she starts to relate and connect the content from those three sources with situations in our everyday life. So it's very attainable, in my opinion, to see yourself in the content that was created, right? And when she does that, she starts to then point us into this clear, this very effective way, this path for us to understand the causes of our suffering, but also, again, to remain aware, to maybe become better prepared to prevent any additional source of pain and suffering. So I'm going to bring another one just as very quickly. Wanted to bring to us here the idea that what is so important for my my love for Joanna de Angelis, right? And my attraction to her is the idea that there is a very close integration between her psychological insights and spiritism. So the aspects of Joanna de Angelis' work, her over, is really tied to that ability to merge those principles. So, on one hand, spiritism, on the other hand, some deep psychological concepts, which, by the way, parenthesis here, a lot of people I've been told, are averse to learning or reading Joanna de Angelis because they keep saying, but I need to have a psychology degree to understand all those terms. So more to come on that aspect, but you don't. You really don't. But anyways, she does bring very specific concepts to us in her books, and she also brings what I consider this innovative approach to spiritual healing because innovation by really focusing the energy that we need to invest in our inner transformation, in our self knowledge, and really understand that we must uh, get to a point where we can reach that emotional balance because that is part of our evolving spirit, right? It is my opinion that Joanna's teachings really is helping make spiritism more accessible to those who are seeking mental and emotional well-being, who may not consider themselves spiritist, may not consider themselves Christian or even religious of any sort, but are simply looking for some information that can help them through their issues. So I love that about that. And her books often discuss the importance of understanding the mind's role in our own growth when we're dealing with, for example, emotional or mental issues, repression, anything that is really hurting us, right? But it helps us deal with, for example, either past life trauma or childhood trauma that we may have and we may have repressed. And it's all about, again, that idea of seeking the truth, unveiling the shadows that we have within us. And this is not mine or yours, but everywhere, right? 8 billion times the same. But by doing this, we can really get to a place of psychological health. Um, and finally, I believe that this integration is pivotal because it starts to again bring us face to face with what we can call modern day psychological issues. We, as a humanity, as a race, right now, and we're talking about this year, right? We're all facing this really the pandemic, and I'm not talking about COVID-19. I'm talking about the pandemic of pathological anxiety, pathological depression, and even other pains that are uh, just unresolved emotional pain. So this is something that is super cool to me, is to understand that in her legacy, she brings that to the forefront. So I spoke about legacy. What are the legacy? What are the elements in the legacy of Joanna de Angelis? Well, her teachings eh, are helping shape our understanding of this field now called spiritist psychology. And she is, I could say, revered, adored, worshipped. That's not what Joanna de Angelis wants, believe me, but she is somehow respected for all the wisdom that she brings, and that wisdom coupled with a deep sense of compassion, and also her ability to apply spiritual concepts that we all here have been first exposed to all of our day-to-day issue, right? And some of the contributions, and I want to just summarize a little bit further, in the integration with spiritism is the fact that she brings that inner, the push for inner transformation, self-knowledge. Another parenthesis here, everyone, is oh boy, about almost 30 years ago, I started teaching, facilitating actually classes in inner transformation. And I did that for several years. And we moved from a methodology that ranged to 3 years of classes to a year to even 6 months, different sources. And then one day, this is confession here. One day I come across the book, right? And specifically, I'm talking about Existential Conflict by Joanna de Angelis. And I got the great opportunity to teach it, to facilitate the study group of existential conflict, both in Portuguese and in English. Regardless of the language and the audience, I felt that any day that I would study to be able to facilitate the lesson of the week, I received a gentle but very specific slap in my face, because Joanna brought forth a much more mature and kind and compassionate way to look into our inner transformation, right? We don't have time here to go beyond this personal testimonial, but it's really at that point that I became one of those that just absolutely, I must read, I must study. I'm a student, right? And as a student, each day there's more insight that I get into from Joanna de Angelis, and that's the door that was open to me was to studying inner transformation, and the book was existential conflict. But there are many other books that bring to the same content, which is all about looking at our own truth and unveiling them so that we can transform ourselves, right? And I think it's important to understand from her legacy is that her teachings are, broadly speaking, contain this aspect of moral and ethical content, right? So, why do I say that? Which is she explores themes like forgiveness, compassion, love, humility. She also teaches the value, and this is not an apology for suffering, but she brings very insightful awareness to why suffering and the adversities, for example, that we face, all of us individually or collectively, we're facing some trouble today, some sort of pain, but she teaches us that those are true opportunities, and if not mechanism to catapult us to growth. And she urges all of us to really look and change our perspective to problems or challenges as this pathway to overcome the old person that we were, right? To overcome the old man to become to the new man. And as such, it's really important to see how the teachings of Joanna de Angelis closely align to the core tenets of Spiritism, right? Which is that importance of personal responsibility and improvement of oneself. I mentioned before, but I would like to just take another second to talk about how the teachings on emotional healing and spiritual growth are just not limited. It could be, but Joanna, chose not to limit the content to theoretical or even abstract ideas. She brings us very interesting practical tips and practical solutions for anyone who's suffering, especially those of us who are going through some emotional source of suffering that is looking for healing. So, for example, she helps us to understand how to manage our feelings, our emotions like anger or fear or sadness or even feelings of guilt. If you were to just deep dive in the topic of guilt, you can see there's a plethora of content and tips on how to look at guilt from different perspective, so we're better aware of this one feeling that really can tears apart, right? And she also brings, and this is in the very similar vein of teaching about inner transformation, but at the same time that she deals with what is hurting us, what is upsetting us, but she also teaches how to strengthen our qualities, patience, tolerance, love, etc. So I believe her work really resonates with a much broader audience, and anyone who's facing just the stress of everyday life. It was very interesting. I was listening to someone who I respect a lot, and he was talking about the fact that we are humans. Ha! Not new news to anyone, but as human beings, we have our pace, right? We have our time to address issues, to digest those issues in this infinite path to our enlightenment and happiness. And this person was telling me or reminded me as a historian that once we faced with the advent of industrial revolution, right? So we're talking about mid 1700s already. We started to expect, and this is an expectation that increases, that we humans become producers. We have to be producing something akin to a machine, right? Predictable, reliably, all the time. But think about it. At some point, if you go into that metaphor of a machine, the production becomes finite, right? I keep on, I turn it on, the machine, Marcia producing whatever, and then I stop and I go home and I don't know, I go back to my family, I have vacations, weekends, etc. But then this historian kept talking about, in the same vein, that and we're talking about the past 25 years, when we are really increasingly since then facing this virtual world. And one of the culprits are, of course, social media. But before social media, we had the advent of internet, email, etc., and how we've become on all the time. There are many interesting books today that talk about, that address anxiety, especially in the younger generation, because that younger generation did not face the being human time expectations, or being machine time time expectations, right? This virtual reality that we live now, access all the time, so we're on. We go to sleep, we're on. We go to the bathroom, we're on. We eat and we're on, and we never disconnect. So it's a very interesting, because I I would say, maybe this is an invitation for all of us to look at how am I honoring myself as a individual, as a human being, and how can I go back to really going back to being a more kind and gentle with myself in the time that I need to address all the complexities of who we are, right? So, anyways, I wanted to ask Dr. Assisi if I have a little bit more time to continue to talk about Joanna de Angelis. And I don't know, he's not back on camera, so I'm going to continue talking. Is that okay, everyone? Because I think it's important for us to say that in that connection, the close connection between psychology and spiritism, guess what? It is really inevitable. It's something that is important for all of us, because so many people keep asking this question that I mentioned before: do we need to be psychologists, right? Do I need to be in the medical field to be able to understand? And why a spirit of light like Joanna de Angelis has dedicated herself so much to the work, to that spreading and reflecting this idea of psychology and spiritism? Well, um, it was inevitable, I have to say. And if we stop to perhaps reflect a moment, we can say that that path that she is on really was kicked off, right? Kick started by Allan Kardec, right? And most of us forget that Kardec, our amazing codifier of spiritism, right? The focus of what he has done was to really meet or bridge science and religion. But beyond that, Kardec's subtitle, as we know, the Spirit's Review of Revista Espírita, as the Journal of Psychological Studies. And he brought in those amazing publications the scientific nature of spiritism, and it's funny because if you look into the January 1858 edition of that publication, and I can again, translating to English, my translated translation here is Kardec says the following: our framework, as you see, encompasses everything related to the knowledge of the metaphysical part of man. We will, so this is the focus of spiritism, right? We will study in its present and future state. For studying the nature spirits is to study man, given that he will one day become part of the world of spirits. This is why we added our main title, the subtitle of Journal of Psychological Studies. So he brings that, and we can go on a lot more, because Herculano Pires, for example, in his book The Spirit in Time, he references how the mediumistic phenomena falls in the psychological domain, right? And also very interesting for those of you who have studied the early spiritists, right? The early contributors to Spiritism. Gabriel Delany, in his book Spiritism and Science, this is really interesting. 1883, right? 1883, he addressed post-hypnotic suggestion, but he also talked or invited the scientific community. We must investigate the mental zone called the unconscious. Okay, 1883. But Sigmund Freud and his ideas, he's the pioneer, right? His idea about the unconscious evolved, as we know, over time, but the concept was first brought to us in 1899, 16 years later, in the book The Unconscious, and then in 1990, The Interpretation of Dreams, right? Carl Jung, he furthers bring to us the idea of now collective unconscious in 1910, right? So when we start to talk about Kardec, we talked about Gabriel Delady, we talked about maybe even Ernesto Bozano, right? When he in 1938 talked about thought and will, um, Charles Richet, right? Who was a French physiologist who won the Nobel Prize in 1913, he talked about this psychic research of the time. I just cannot imagine living at the time. Can you imagine that? And one more tidbit for all of us to think about it is that and it's really 11 years only, but between 1889 and 1990, Spiritism was actually an integral part of the nascent field of psychology. And so the annual international psychology conferences that were held during this period, all of their programs included sessions on spiritist phenomena. How about that? So it is only 1990 that we see that they decoupled spiritism from psychology. But it is really fascinating to me to see that all of that, those Kardec, Freud, Bozano, Gustav Jung, etc., are all immersed in this time period that we're all talking about this notion of the psychological aspect of humanity. So it's been a long time, it's been a long way, but it took Joanna de Angelis, and that's her pioneering role here, to bring spiritism now closer to, now no longer a nascent field, but to psychology as we know today. So I wanted to again ask Dan, do I have more time, or do we want to stop here and leave it for another day, another time?
Hi, Marcia. Thank you so very much. I think I think that we are going to pause here in honor of the time of folks that are
Yeah,
in person here as well. Thank you for that wonderful introduction to the almost mythic figure that is Joanna de Angelis and her
yeah,
role in spiritualist and
yeah.
spiritist thought, especially as it comes to psychology. But before we ask you to maybe, if you will indulge us in a prayer in a little bit to close things up, we do have two quick questions for you that we hope
Sure.
we can ask that came up here from our site today.
Mhm.
One of them is you talked about the psychology, the psychological series by Joanna de Angelis,
Yeah, yeah.
and the first one was the first question that came up is there an order to that? Is that a book that you
Yes.
think that people should start by?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Give me 2 minutes, but there are 16 books. And I have to say this, by the way, a expert in Joanna de Angelis, because I started, as I mentioned before, my journey with existential conflicts. And then I went to self-discovery. And then I went to wake up and be happy. And I was scolded. No, Marcia, each book has an order and they're built upon each other, and each chapter in each book has an order as well. So that's when we started back to the beginning, and the order is number one, Jesus in Our Days, which is in English, and it's the first one to talk about the the theoretical messages of Jesus. It's amazing. The second one is, to me, uh, each one is better, right, Dan? But the integral human being, which marries concepts, as we can see really well in Carl Gustav Jung, on that notion of individuation. We have a dual side of us, and it's how we come together as an integral human being. Third one is plenitude. Fourth, times of health and consciousness. Fifth one is awesome, the conscious being. And the sixth one, self discovery, an inner search. Wake up and be happy. I love that book. Life, challenges and solutions. Love, unbeatable love. Not yet translated to English. The awakening of the spirit, not yet in English. Jesus in the gospel in light of deep psychology. Personal triumph, not in English. Existential conflicts, I mentioned before. Finding peace and truth. In search of truth, and the psychology of gratitude, the latest one published, 15 years ago in 1910.
And if I could only click the buttons fast enough, I really struggle with that. Thank you for that, Marcia. The last question here we have time for is you mentioned some training on anxiety, depression, and so forth. Is there resources or other materials that you could point people to, or key concepts that you would suggest people investigate to dive a little bit deeper into
Yeah.
these powerful and very contemporary topics?
Yes, there are actually several books by developed by AMI Brazil, right, the Spiritist Medical Association arm, and they've done this work. And I just wanted to, Dan, to go back to when did this began, right? Because the timeline is quite short and quite long. Their effort to bring access, to answer your question, right, on those day-to-day issues that we're going through. And it was 1998 that the idea was formed, but 10 years later, there was this commitment to get started. And since 2008, that group, they founded two things. What we call NEPJA, the NEPGA, the Joanna de Angelis Psychological Studies Group, right? And that group is there to offer support to anyone who's interested in knowing more. And then at the same time, so we're talking about 2000. uh, 8 to 2015, in that time, the Spiritual Medical Association of Brazil created the Psychology and Spiritism group, right? And that group within the medical spiritist organization is all about understanding and focusing on the mental health, and that department, which is it's led by 15 professionals in the mental health. They are creating many resources. Many are available. I would say go to AME Brazil, and it's all available, not only in books but also in videos and resources. It's a really a very comprehensive series of information.
Thank you so very much, Marcia. We really are thankful to have you here today in this new enterprising, project that we have. Thank you for sharing your wisdom in such a short amount of time. We understand that 30 minutes, 40 minutes is not enough to dive into the body of knowledge that
Mhm.
Joanna de Angelis brings to us or expands on. So we're really thankful for you to take your time today, all the way from Tennessee. Maybe one day we'll have you here in person as well.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
and as it is a custom for us over here, we would love to close our activity today with a prayer, which is just a
Okay,
way of elevating our thoughts to something greater in search of wonderful energies and connection and understanding. Would you be so kind to wrap us up with a final short prayer?
absolutely. Thank you. I just want to first of all thank you, Dan, for this invitation. Thanks everyone to who are here today or maybe in the future. Um, and most of all, with a deep sense of gratitude, we thank the spirits of light who are here blessing the work that is being kicked off today, blessing all of us who are here focused on learning a little bit more. And we do ask for our guidance and insight so that we are able to address our own truths. Many times they hurt, many times due to trauma or any painful, repressed aspects of our psyche. We hide away from ourselves. May we encounter the courage to be strong and to embrace the path to psychological maturity and spiritual involvement. So be it.
So be it. Thank you very much, Marcia. It was great to have you here. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us and this new enterprise. As we're saying, we're trying something new. We're going to get better on the logistics and with time. So we thank everybody who is watching us and joining us today. I want to remind you that next month, on February 2nd, we'll have our friend Luis Lima here with us. And that's going to be another wonderful opportunity for us to chat. And finally, I want to thank all the groups in California and remind folks that if you are out in California and you'd like to find a Spiritist group, we have many of them throughout the state, and you can just visit calspiritist.org or even spiritistgroups.org to find a Spiritist group near you. We are going to put a banner of Napa, California, where they are, so in case you want to find them. But thank you so very much for being with us today, and we hope to see you soon in person in one of our Spiritist groups. Have a good day.